Going to continue our looks at the NECA Toys Ash vs. the Evil Dead. This is the Demon Spawn. A very tall, lanky, and otherwise very creepy looking figure. It's from the new wave of Ash vs. the Evil Dead figures based on the Starz original series. So let's figure out how tall the Demon Spawn is. We'll put the tape measure next to it. It's a 7-inch tall, maybe a 7¼ tall figure. For its accessories, the only thing it really comes with is a pair, or I guess a trio of interchangeable heads. If we look at the body, the one that defaults out of packaging, you can see it's more of a smile. And then with that, you can either swap it out, if I hold the figure here, swap it out for one that looks like it's more so mouth open slightly, or you can get the one that just is outright screaming. I would be screaming if either one of these were on the sockets of the figure, and at the very least, I would be screaming if I came across one of these in person. It's a terrifying looking figure. Not really sure which one I prefer head-wise. I actually, to be honest, kind of like this one right here, the screaming mouth, but I guess you could really go with any of them. They're not that much different from one another, at least from the nose up. It's really from the nose down that they do get drastically different from one another. Let's say we go with the one I was going to pick. So I'll go ahead and take the head off the socket. NECA now using more clear, well not clear, straight pegs is what I was supposed to say. Versus using ball joints. I'm glad that they're going the route of straight pegs rather than ball joints, because it makes for removing heads and swapping heads out a whole lot easier. So here he is with the screaming head. Again, a very terrifying display of plastic here in front of us. The figure is very lanky. Got a hair there. Figure is very lanky, very gray. There's really not a whole lot of color happening here. Instead, what you're getting treated to is a fantastic sculpt. Now, I looked at this and I thought to myself, this figure could very well be used for other... I mean, obviously, toy companies always try to use as much as they could from existing molds. And even though I drew a blank trying to think of another figure, another character that could make use of the same mold, it's definitely a mold so good that they should consider using for some future outing along the way. Not really sure what, but some future outing down the road they could really make use of this sculpt. Okay, so let's have a look at his head. We've kind of already established the fact that the heads are not that much different from one another, so we'll kind of base our point or base our details off of the one. But again, if you want to just see it versus the original, there's very, very many, it's a big long list of things that make this an entirely creepy looking figure based on a very creepy looking design. First things first is like the ash sort of, no, not that ash, but sort of the ash sort of skin tone that is given here to Demon Spawn. It's a very dark, dingy sort of gray, and amongst that, it's almost like the color of lead, like pencil lead, making up the body here. It's almost got a metallic sheen to it, which carries its way also into the head as well. The very, very dark recessed areas of the eyes only then also accented by these cracks around the outer area of the eye, which really adds the element of scare to this figure. Everything about this is gray, right down to the teeth, the tongue, though they are slightly different shades of gray. They are all a similar type of gray. I'm, again, loving this body sculpt. Maybe over the course of this review, I'll try to come up with some characters that could make use of this figure base. But if you can think of anything, let me know down below in the comments section. I do love the sheen, going back to the metallic that's been added here. It does seem like it slightly departs here, where like the stomach and the lower torso don't seem quite the same color as the top part here. In fact, even like the arms don't quite jive. Like the torso is very distinctly one shade or several different shades, but very distinct in color versus the arms. The arms are a little lighter in color. Now, Granted, for the nature of what the character is, it would make sense that it may not be consistent across the board. It doesn't have to necessarily apply that it all has to have the same types of grays, but it's definitely a little bit lighter, though, to be said on the arms here. Also, in addition to that, I love these little scratches and nicks all in the body. Not only is it thin, but it's a very flat body. I mean, right down to its behind there. It's very flat. There's very little shape that's been given to it. Again, I just love the design of this. I actually consider even getting a couple of these, so I can make use of the fact that it's got such a good head sculpt. I feel almost wrong for the fact that I'm only picking one and leaving the other two behind. It's like having kids. You can't just pick one and leave the other. Well, you obviously can't leave the other two behind. But yeah, just really nice looking head sculpt. Again, there's the peg hole on the underside there. To give you a scale comparison, how much taller the demon spawn is versus the other figures from this wave, we'll bring in Henrietta. Just recently looked at this gross, just layered, flabby, flesh, decayed body of Henrietta. And then, of course, before that, we had to look at Asylum Ash. I'm just going to move all of them over so you guys can get a better look at them. They are very drastically different from one another. In fact, I couldn't even think of how much further different they are from one another. Both coloring. Henrietta, actually, of the three, ironically enough, pops the most on color because of the flesh tone. Ash is a little bit more on the neutral side, and of course you've got the gray scale, the gray tones of the demon spawn here on the other side. We'll move these out of the way. For more in-depth reviews of those, of course, check out my previous reviews of those. In the way of its posability, demon spawn not only rotates at the top, but also rotates or hinges at the very least on two ball joints. There's a ball joint here, and then there's the ball joint or peg joint happening on the top there. Not only to that, also has a ball joint happening in the mid-torso, has a crunch, which is actually almost seems inverted. Normally you get the crunch further up and you get almost the swiveling happening here, but it's the opposite happening for the demon spawn. And it's neat that you can kind of get that lower crunch happening here, where again, like you could have it just kind of crouched down, walking its way towards you. Just a terrifying looking figure. Arms hinge outward as well. You can rotate the arms all the way around. There is that new hinge joint that I'm starting to see with a lot of the NECA releases, where you've got the hinge happening here and here. But it's pretty seamless, though, for how much you can actually do with those arms. In addition to that, you can also rotate the hands. The legs still split out. This, by the way, is a softer, that same rubbery plastic that we've seen with other figures. Normally that is up here. It seems like it's a little bit softer down here. Like right there. It feels like it's a little bit of a softer plastic. The legs don't rotate necessarily. I guess to some extent they rotate down by the knee area. You've got the double hinge happening, but the hinge happens in the most obscure of places. You would think actually that the hinge would be here and a hinge would be here, but in fact there's a hinge up here, and then you have to go way down to the bottom of town to get the hinge at the bottom area here. It actually works on both sides of the kneecap rather than actually on the kneecap, so they've kept the kneecap pretty intact without affording or sacrificing it with a big cut across the knees there. Lastly, the feet rotate all the way around, and it also has a hinge back and forth. Peg holes, by the way, on the undersides of the feet. Despite the fact that its feet are so small, I can still get the demon spawn to stand perfectly fine. And that's even having the crunch in play. The figure seems to stand a-okay. By the way, in first and final looks, I want to stress the fact that the display stand that you see the figure currently standing on top of did not come with the figure. It was just something I had kicking around I used for the display of him. So if you are looking for the stand inside the packaging when you pick up the demon spawn for yourself, you won't find it. I've included that. The figure itself is terrifying. Terrifying in all the good ways. Its sculpt as well as its paint really resonates a terrifying experience. The interchangeable heads are a nice touch and maybe entertains the idea for myself, at least, to pick up another one of these, so at the very least I can make use of these head sculpts. It makes me think For all the time and effort that NECA or the artists in NECA are sculpting these head sculpts, it's a shame that sometimes alternate head sculpts ultimately just end up in bags somewhere while you have the main figure on display with one of the heads that you've chosen. For such a good job on all the other heads, I may be again entertained to the idea of picking up another one of these just so I could display them in, at the very least, 2 different looks. I may not probably pick up another 2 of these, but at the very least, I'd want to at least have them displayed with more than one head sculpt. The head sculpts are that good. The paints, as you could probably look and see, is a combination of, again, those shiny silvers and grays and blacks, all kind of coming together and working very well. The arms aren't quite the same color, nor are the knees and the lower torso, but somehow it all comes together in a very terrifying way. Of the 3 figures that we had to look at, I feel kind of more fond of this one of the other 2 just because this one's very unique. Henriette had a gross factor to it, and of course Ash was a decent enough figure, but this one I think really of the 3 resonates the most to me. It's unique, it's very different, and it's something that we haven't seen NECA really do before. And as a side note, the body is so good on this figure, I hope we can see it again in a different figure release from NECA. Today we were having a look at the final figure from the Ash vs. the Evil Dead wave. This was Demon Spawn. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. Many more videos will be coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.